Hi, folks. Here's a look at our unclear on the concept for this episode.
This will help me ace the test.
So what do you think, Rikko?
It's certainly relatable, but also quite terrifying.
Right? Okay, but what it does is it sets the stage for today's topic, sleep. Or more accurately, what happens when we don't sleep enough and why that's making us less happy, less healthy, and maybe a little meaner on social media.
Well, that certainly justifies my 10 p.m. bedtime.
Good man. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can watch that Unclear on the Concept clip at theprofessorislive.com or catch it on our YouTube channel.
Let's roll.
Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rikko Smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Salisbury. Welcome to The Professor is Live. I'm here with my producer, Rikko. That's right down in the corner there. And today we're exploring one of the simplest, most powerful things you can do to improve your brain, mood, and performance. And that is get enough sleep. You know, Rikko, sleep turns out to be quite important for our overall health. Research using data from the ABCD study it makes me, I know it was about children, but it makes it almost seem like children conducted the study with a name like that, but that's a topic for another day. But it's the largest long-term study of brain development and child health in the United States. It shows that changes in the brain are related to how long a person sleeps and may contribute to observed mental health problems.
That explains why I'm so grumpy in the morning.
Indeed. So joining us today to help us understand why sleep is so important is Dr. Roxanne Prichard, and she's a neuroscientist, professor, and leading expert on what's going on in your head while you're snoozing. She's been studying the sleeping brain for decades, first with rats and tiny electrodes, and now with young adults.
So basically, she's paid to watch people sleep for science?
Exactly. And she's discovered that sleep isn't a waste of time. It's an active, life-sustaining, brain-repairing, optimism-generating process. So you'll want to stay awake for this one, folks. Here she is. Welcome, Roxanne, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's great having you. And we were just chatting. We actually work at the same institution, but I don't think we've ever actually met. So this is kind of so nice to meet you and welcome to the show. And I understand that you've done a lot of work around sleep and what it means to people. So if you could share that with us, that would be great.
Sure. So I've been studying the sleeping brain for about a quarter century now. I started with more of the neurophysiology of it in rats. So kind of actually doing brain surgery on rats and recording from neurons and seeing how they changed across sleep states, whether they're in deep sleep or REM sleep or wakefulness, and how that sleep kind of has implications for other sorts of behaviors. But once I started teaching college students full-time in 2004, I switched my research model to humans, and especially young adult humans, to see how sleep is related to mental health, to academic performance, to retention, to athletic performance, to all these different variables, because we spend a good third of our lives asleep. And for 2
Yes.
hours of that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm guessing that these students inspired you and you've been thinking about maybe giving them a taser if they doze off. I'm sure that's the
No,
thing.
nope. As I explained to them, if they fall asleep in class, I know it's not me. It's the inevitable accumulation of adenosine.
And that 1/3 of our life, I've always wondered about that, especially as a younger person. As I get older, I'm going, sleep is good. And so, but when I was younger, I was always contemplated like we spend 1/3 of our lives asleep. And it's not only us, it's other mammals. And why is it so important? Because as I understand it, we're not really in a rest state. There's a lot of things going on during our sleep. And so why is it so critical?
Great question. So we humans have known for a long time that sleep deprivation, total sleep deprivation, which is a form of torture or advanced interrogation, depending on which team you're on, but it's fatal, right? So we literally need sleep to live, right? The brain cannot support life if it doesn't have a chance to become disconnected from consciousness and hallucinate for a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
Seems weird, right?
Yeah. And I know you study this, right?
Right.
And you're a neuroscientist, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And so what's going on with that sleep? Why is it so critical? I'm trying to think of the exact answer.
We're at a really exciting point at kind of the juncture between big data and neuroscience where we can start to get at that question, right? So sleep offers a different neural state for the brain to make some last minute, or like not last minute, but immediate alterations to keep it from overexciting itself.
Yeah.
So think of 100 billion neurons, right? And this balance between excitation and inhibition needs to be like just right, because if we get a little bit too much excitotoxicity, that's seizures, that's a forward feedback loop that just escalates to the point of dysfunction. So as we are going about our day, learning all these new things, taking in new memories, having new experiences, that excites the nervous system, but it needs to be taken down a notch with more inhibition so that it can do some basic cellular repair and recovery. And that point is called criticality. And you can like measure like just when the system is getting so much new information that if it doesn't take a minute and sort of recalibrate the ratio of excitation to inhibition, it would excite itself to death.
Wow. I read a book, it's probably been 10 years ago, and it was by a neuroscientist, and he was saying about all of the things we're starting to find out about sleep. And so one of the things was that we're actually learning while we're asleep. We're actually encoding things in a way. And so is that true? Or as we found out more, it's been 10 years, what's the current kind of idea about sleep and all those fun things that are going on?
Right. That's a great question. So, okay, we study during the day, right? We acquire new information, we learn new lists, we learn new plays. But learning is a relatively permanent change in physiology or anatomy that holds that new memory, if it were, right? So we can input, but the learning process has to be some tinkering to make a new capacity to hold that information. And that tinkering actually takes a couple weeks or even months to do. So, and that tinkering is when our brain, kind of supported by sleep, is able to sort of visit what it's learned and figure out how does that connect to a different idea? What bucket should I put it in? What file folder, to use a computer analogy? And then how many routes of access do I need for this thing? What does it hook onto? How important is it? So when we are really sort of training these new memories, we also have to train new pathways to hold them. So that could be like myelinating, which means speeding up the conductance of electric circuits between different neurons.
Wow. Okay. So, is it fair to say that recently, in recent medical history here that we're now starting to realize that sleep is actually more important than we used to?
I would say yes and no. So the medical part is, yes, we have more reasons we can count, but culturally, we have thrown sleep out the window in the last
Yeah.
100 years or so. So 100 years ago, the normal time in bed for adults was 10 hours at night, right?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
now we have skyrocketing rates of insomnia, which is just lost confidence or performance anxiety around sleep. We have our phones and our devices keeping us up at all hours. We're using alarm clocks, like there weren't alarm clocks back then, to wake us
Yeah.
up before we're physiologically done with sleep. So we have a much worse relationship to sleep than we did for
Now
most of
that's
human history.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So at the time we're finding out that sleep is actually more important than we thought, we're actually paying less attention to it.
Correct. Or we're sabotaging it more.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the second most common thing traded on the global market after oil?
I don't know.
Coffee beans. And now they're
Yeah.
hugely tariffed, right? But so we as humans have also figured out a lot more chemical ways to interfere with our sleep cycles now. So we have a lot more stimulants and a lot of other drugs that change with our ability to have good sleep.
Oh my goodness. And we do that on purpose, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So what about the other side then? Part of our show is about, trying to become more optimistic. And one of those things is just taking better care of ourselves and being aware of the things that we're learning in the medical field and the things we're learning about ourselves. And so what could we take away that could help us put the importance that we should on sleep and actually prepare ourselves for better sleep?
So I think one of the most important things is just acknowledging the power of sleep. I think a lot of people think it's wasted time, or I'll get to it when I get to it, or while you're sleeping, I was training. I hate those shirts because they're not consistent with athletic performance results in sleep. What we need to understand is how important sleep is and to value it, right? That's step one, to be like,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the dishes in the sink because I'm getting good sleep. I'm making this choice. I'm not sacrificing my health for 10 more emails or whatever
Yeah.
else I'm doing. I think that's probably step one, is admitting like there's a better relationship that could be had. Step two is to recognize your body signals. Go to sleep when you're sleepy. Like none of this is groundbreaking science. Go to sleep when you're sleepy, sleep until you're done sleeping, and do it on a pretty regular basis. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Sometimes the simplest things are the things we don't want to do. And I've heard people, I've been on projects with people and we've got a deadline or something, and somebody will say, well, you need some sleep. And then the answer sometimes is, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll have plenty of time then. But I think that clearly we're starting to understand that that's probably not a very good attitude. And it doesn't bring out the best in us, I would think. Not only in performance, I would bet, but also it has something to do with our overall happiness, would be my guess.
When we don't get enough sleep, we see the world through a much more negative lens. We're much more likely to interpret ambiguous signals as threats. So it seems like a lonelier and more anxious and more depressed world when we're not sleeping well. So sleep is really a giver of optimism. That's even like scripture. Weeping may endure for the night, but joy cometh in the morning, right? After that sleep.
Yes, very good. And then even people like Ben Franklin, had little sayings about it, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, and those kinds of things. So we've known this a long time, but I guess sometimes it's good for science to kind of reinforce some of these things that we've known, and so we take them a little more seriously and take them home. So, well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. And thanks again. Have a good rest of your day and restful night tonight.
Thank you so much. You too.
Wow, there you go, Rikko. I found that was just fascinating, right? On just a number of levels. So here's what I'm taking away. Sleep isn't wasted time, it's essential brain maintenance. It fuels optimism and resilience, and without it, we interpret the world more negatively. Respect the basics. Go to bed when you're tired, wake up when you're done, keep a consistent schedule. And finally, value sleep as health. A good night's rest is one of the most powerful acts of self-care you can choose.
So basically, go to bed.
That's kind of it, isn't it? Right? So that kind of wraps up our show in a sense. And yeah.
Best advice ever given. No quote today?
Of course I have a quote. I was just waiting because I wanted to build anticipation with our audience out there for my quote of the day. And here it is. Finish each day before you begin the next and interpose a solid wall of sleep between the two.
Is that Ralphie from the Christmas Story movie?
That's pretty darn close. But actually, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of The Professor is Live. Watch past shows on theprofessorislive.com, YouTube, or Spotify. Subscribe, share, and join the conversation.
But after a good night's sleep.
That is true indeed. All right, we'll see you next time on The Professor is Live.
The Professor is Live is hosted by Mark Salisbury, produced by Rikko Smart. We go live on LinkedIn, then bring it straight to you as a podcast. Want the inside scoop on new episodes and the chance to bring The Professor is Live to your own event? Don't wait. Join The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury Group on LinkedIn or head to theprofessorislive.com today. While you're there, check out our executive coaching for the era of AI program. It's based on Mark's book, Leadership in the Era of AI. It will empower you to lead with more brains, more courage, and more heart, so you can cut through complexity, embrace change with confidence, and inspire the people around you. This isn't just about leadership at work. It's about transforming your life in the era of AI. Until next time, stay curious, stay optimistic, and keep leading with purpose. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury, copyright 2025.